In DC, for DC. DC Radio, 96.3 HD4 and DCRadio.gov.
Welcome to insideSTYLE, DCRadio.gov, 96.3 HD4. I'm your host, George Worrell. Joining me today is hospitality professional, my dear friend for almost 30 years, Ms. Shantice Rodriguez. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, God, I can't believe this, that we've talked about things like this for years on the phone, and you're here.
I know. It's hard to believe.
Now, look, we met, oh, my God, in the early 90s at Uno's.
1992.
I was going to say the 90s. You don't have to put 92. At Uno's, and it was an instant, bond, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Not just hospitality, but friendship, motherhood, career, all of those things. Was that your first restaurant job?
It was my very first restaurant job. I actually had to tell a little white lie to get that job because I didn't have any experience.
Okay.
So when the manager at the time interviewed me, he said, "Did you have an experience?" I literally had done one job as a day waiter for a caterer. And I was like, "Oh, yes, I used to work for a caterer." And he's like, "Okay, you've got the job." Sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
So listen, you're from Washington.
Native.
Yeah. How was it like growing up for you in D.C.?
So D.C. was very, very different back then. So I grew up in the 80s, as comedians like to say, when crack was going on. So it gave you a certain amount of awareness of your surroundings. But I will tell you that your friends were everything. And your community was everything. So people are very hood proud, as you can probably call it right now, because people will say, "Oh, I'm from Deanwood. Oh, I'm from Clifton Heights." But it's interesting how those names have been rebranded and mean something else now.
So large family.
So I am the oldest of 5.
Okay.
And I came from a rather large extended family. So my mother, my aunt, and my uncles were very much like older brothers in certain respect and older sisters in certain respect, because my mother was a little young. But it was so beautiful because I think that the seeds of my hospitality career started with my family. My grandfather was the consummate host, and we always had people in our home, and there were always barbecues and birthdays. We celebrated every last thing that you could possibly celebrate. My grandmother was this great cook. So the truth is, I kind of got it rightly to be in hospitality because it was very much a part of my upbringing.
Yeah. You and I have talked about your time at Duke Ellington. Talk to us a little bit about being at Duke Ellington.
That was literally the best 4 years of my life. Folks don't quite understand the indelible mark that an Ellington education leaves upon a person. Even if you don't actually enter into the arts as a career, the tutelage that you get from the teachers, from the administration, and then the exposure to artists and celebrities. I met Dizzy Gillespie before he died. We met Marlon Jackson. Dionne Warwick got caught in our elevator twice. I mean, and then not to mention, the greatness that was Peggy Cooper Capritz and also of Mike Malone. I mean, these are, to the normal public that don't understand who they were and why they founded Duke Ellington, so that there could be a school of top-notch education as well as artistic education for young African Americans. And it was a beautiful place.
Did you find a freedom?
The level of freedom that we experience at Ellington is bar none. Because, most artists are considered outcasts. And at Ellington, you are a school of outcasts. So there was no one that was looked down upon. The only time you were looked down upon is if you didn't go to your arts classes. Literally, people would be like, "What are they here for?" There are like 5 girls that want to be here. They need to get out.
But isn't it's so important, I think, and you and I'm older than you, but to have that level of freedom, because you don't always get it at home, and not that that's a bad thing, but people are raised how they were raised. But to have that level of freedom to be around like-minded people and the freedom to express what it is that you love. Because as we know at this stage of the game, it's what you love that will fund your lifestyle. It will fund, paying your mortgage, all of those things. It'll take care of you.
Very much so. But let there be no mistake, the teachers at Ellington kept it real for us as African Americans as well. So I think that a great deal of my work ethic comes from that. We understood that we needed to shine at all times. We understood that we needed to work harder, and that there will be people that will immediately look at us before we even stepped to the bar and said 5, 6, 7, 8 and said no. So we had to be better. We had to be stronger. We had to be more technically advanced. So that level of excellence was something that we always strove for and was very well expected of us at Ellington.
So what was your first job like in your career? What were some of the things that you did before we get into the hospitality, or was it always hospitality?
So it was almost always hospitality, but I was also in retail for a good portion of time.
Lord, how was that? I'm laughing because, we both have done, retail. How was that for you? Because I know how it was for me.
Well, so I think that what interested me, believe it or not, just from the hospitality aspect, even in that, was that the people who were coming in to shop, they were going out to these wonderful restaurants and they were talking about, oh my God, we just ate here and we ate there and we had this. And I was like, this is a whole different world. This is a whole different level of luxury that I am very, very interested in. So I think it piqued my interest even then, even though I didn't really know that path was going to be open to me. But it really became something that I wanted and something that I was interested in. And at that point, just as a consumer, not necessarily as a career path.
Well, we both started our careers in that foundation. So do you think it was an innate thing for you to be able to kind of grasp this? Because you've been doing it 28, almost 29 years.
Indeed.
So was your experience starting from, when we were at Udo's waiting tables, was that the foundation for you?
I believe so. But again, I think going back to Ellington was the foundation for why I succeeded in it. Because it takes a great amount of attention to detail to be good at what I do. And I think these are the things that kind of rise some people above the rest. Because it's very easy, and you know this in your career, that it's the people who can see the small things. That
that's wrong.
That's wrong, exactly, because that's pretty much what we were taught. So we were young ballerinas. They would show us a beautiful video of a ballet, and we'd all be there wide-eyed and eager, and she'd say, "Okay, so what did you think about it?" And we're like, "Oh my God, it was so beautiful, and the lights and the camera and her legs." And then they'd roll it back and say, "Okay, her leg is out of place here, and right here she missed the step, and over here he almost dropped her." So we were like, "How did you see all that?" And so our eyes were trained to be able to see the problems. And that served me very well in the hospitality industry.
How were you able to, and we'll take this in stages, manage a career, having kids, being married, all of that? How was that juggled? Let's talk about it from the beginning, because I remember you just had Christian. And so how are you doing that? Like, kind of navigating our careers and stuff. How are you able to do that as a working mother?
I think one of the problems that women face is trying to give everything equal coverage. You can't. It has to be on a necessity basis. Now, your kids kind of get equal coverage always. That's just the way that works. If you have a moment where you can dig in a little bit more at work because the children are taken care of, you do. If you don't have that moment, you still try to do the things that you need to do and to make sure that everything is covered. But your children always come first. They have to. And with having 4 children, I guess what was important for me was that for them, there was always time, even if it was something, if I was washing dishes, I had a moment with each of them to talk about their day. And I treated them as individuals. I just treated them as human beings. I didn't really think of them like, well, they're my children, so they have to be this way. No, I just, I don't believe they belong to me. I believe they came through me, and they belong to the community. They belong to God. So how dare I try to make them something that I want them to be? They should be what they want to be.
Well, that's a great way to look at it. But was there time for you? How did you carve that time, personal time for you?
So there was not always time for me.
Okay.
But it's something that you have to fight for. And it's something that you have to understand. And this is even in managing a restaurant. The truth is that the first thing as a manager that you need to be able to manage is you. So if you can't manage your time, and if you can't manage your emotions and your ability to take criticism, any of these things, if you can't do these, then it's going to be very difficult for you to manage others. And so it's the same thing with my children. So if I can't manage being able to get them where they have to be and for them to know that I am always there, then I'm falling short in what I should be able to do for them.
So we're going to cover two things here. One, it's Black History Month, and next month is Women's History Month. How was it, or how is it for you as a Black woman professional in your industry? Because we talked yesterday, and you were saying that there were 2% at what you do. So give us a kind of an outlook of what you think is going on.
So the article that I was referencing, that that globally of management positions that are held, there are 2% of people from African descent that hold those positions.
And let us add that you are the general manager of a restaurant here in Washington. Go ahead.
It's interesting because I think that it's rare that we as African Americans get invited to the party. Because let's just be honest, our stereotypes don't necessarily support our success in that arena. So, and there are very few places where the stereotypes about us support our success, unless you have a ball in your hand or if you're a rapper or some type of musician. Other than that, if it comes to having to be savvy, having to be intelligent, having to manage people, and having to be profitable, not necessarily will they look for the Black girl when this happens. But they did look for one, or found one. Well, they found one, but truly,
but as a whole, it's not.
It's not something that happens. It's not something that's readily accessible to us. However, it's there.
But also, too, we were talking about getting in and leaving the door open for those coming behind us. And I'm finding what I do, what you do, sometimes if that door is open, we can open it, but sometimes if it's not always open for us, like they get in and close it. And if you can get in, good luck.
Very true. But I will say this, is that I've always lived my life in such a way, and I've always tried to hone my craft in such a way that if you shut the door for me, that it really looks like an obvious fail on your part. Because and I think that we don't have a moment where we are actually very solid in our abilities. I'm good at what I do. I'm great at what I do. And it's important to feel that way. It's important to know that. Because as my son normally says to us when we are feeling not very confident, he says, you have to be confident because people will make you believe that you can't breathe air. And that's something that we do naturally. The other part, too, is that, with the door being open, we need to be ready to walk in when it's open for us. That's the second part of it.
So it's you can dream
Truly.
and look at it. So people will say, hey, I want to be a GM of a restaurant. Give us a day about being a GM at a restaurant.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so
Do you know what I mean? Because you see it like, oh, I could run this. I could do, can you?
well, and that's very interesting, and that's normally the question that I ask people if they want to be a GM or if or the manager of any sort. Because the truth is, my day starts long before I ever enter the restaurant. I'm normally up every morning at about 5:00. I'm starting to answer emails about 6:10. And then I'm answering emails on my way in. I'm making calls. I'm answering calls. Those calls continue, considering it's a restaurant, until 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night sometimes. And it has nothing really to do with things not being run well. It's just the level of commitment that you have to give to the restaurant in itself.
But something's always happening.
Truly.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we
There are
both
lots of moving
started
parts.
together. Yeah. And, you know, being able from where you started, where we both started, like being able to go run stuff in the window, you know, to get the food out, then to run it and get the tickets right, all of that stuff. And it takes to be able to think mechanically. Do you know what I mean?
Very much so.
Even at that level, you're taking that in and taking it to a whole new level because you're responsible for the numbers. So something we talked about yesterday when we hear people say, hey, I want to open a restaurant.
I normally say to people, the first thing I ask them is like, have you ever worked in a restaurant? And I stand by this belief that wanting to open a restaurant is one of the most dangerous fantasies you could possibly have if you have never run a restaurant. Because most people, let's not even talk about understand concept and understand level of service. Most people don't even understand the numbers. So if you don't understand the numbers for you to be able to be profitable in a restaurant, because the truth is, for every dollar that you make in a restaurant, 10 cents is profit. And that for everything that you charge, you also have to add in all the things that you don't charge for. Your straws, your insurance, the dude who cleans the kitchen, all of these things. So you have to be really savvy financially and understand what you're doing and how you're doing it in order to be profitable. I look at Eater every day, and every year they have the list of restaurants that are no longer here.
And we can see it too.
Right.
Yeah. It's so funny because there's a restaurant that we covered and it was there. And then the next day, you know, I kind of saw people, it wasn't very busy.
Sure.
The concept was pretty cool. And then it wasn't. And then the restaurant that took its place is busy all the time. Like
right.
a line, like it's the same space.
Truly. And what happens, I think, a lot of times is that folks don't do their legwork knowing what the neighborhood needs. A lot of people like to get really egotistical and want to tell the neighborhood what they need versus actually doing a little market research and seeing like what is missing here and how can we serve? Because that's the thing. In hospitality, it is a business of service. So if we are trying to dictate what is needed, 9 times out of 10 we are dictated.
Can we talk about service a little bit?
Oh, of course we can. I knew this was
coming. And while
coming.
we're so familiar, we've known each other for 30 years. I knew Christian when he was a baby. And it's just, I cannot get over how we're having this conversation. We're privying people to the conversations that you and I have on a daily basis on the phone for the last 28 years, right?
Watch it.
So, service.
Yes.
We started in service. What I do is service. What you do is service. What's changed? Why is it the way that it is? Everywhere.
I think that, so when you and I started in service, it was a sense of pride to give good service. How dare we ever come to a table and not give the proper steps of service, not actually be kind. Let's just start there. But I think that somehow we have lost this idea that being gracious is actually a power. It is. Because the truth is, being gracious and being kind and, being welcoming, this is what gets people to come back as into a restaurant to any service industry. Because the truth is, and this is something that I tell my servers all the time, people can cook at home. They come here because they want to be served, they want to be welcomed, and in short, they just want to be loved. And if you don't operate your restaurant as a business of love, then this is what I tell my servers all the time, you are slow walking yourselves to the unemployment line.
Mm. I just don't feel that, you can chime in and tell me what you think in reference to that when you're not doing your passion or you're not grateful, because a lot of jobs fund your passion.
Yes.
We were doing our thing until we did our thing. And we were glad to get there. We took double shifts. We took other people's shifts if they didn't want to come in, all of that. And it was like a family. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting that when I go to different places, restaurant industry, whether if you're going shopping or whatever. It's just like, this is the last place I really want to be. And it shows.
Truly, because I think what happens a lot, and what happened for us, is that we had a work ethic. That what we did every day at our job represented who we were as a person, who we wanted to be. It represented our mama, our parents,
exactly.
Our pastor, everybody, because we belonged to something and we knew that our actions were representative of where we came from. Mm-hmm. And I find that not so many of the new generation feel that same connection. And maybe that's what we need to get back, maybe to get them to understand their link to not just the past, but to the future. Mm-hmm. And that every job can be done with respect and reverence and aplomb, regardless of how small it is. One job I had, this gentleman, he was a dishwasher. And he literally was the best dishwasher I had ever employed. Never wanted to do anything else, but he was proud to be a good dishwasher.
Well, Martin Luther King said, be the best street sweeper.
Yes.
Whatever it is that you do, be the best at it, but
yes.
Also enjoy it.
Indeed.
Yeah, and take ownership of it. Would you recommend your career path to others? What would you tell millennials or men and women who may be driving or listening to this and saying, hey, I love food. What are some of the other, aside from, in addition to, recommending this, what are some of the different jobs that people could have in your industry?
My goodness. I would recommend this a great deal to anyone who loves people. Mm-hmm. Because even if you're not necessarily a food person, that helps. But the truth is, it's all about people. So if you love people truly, then this would be a wonderful job for you. Because I am a living testament to tell you that the hospitality industry is one of the few industries where you could literally have no education whatsoever, and you can still do incredibly well for yourself financially.
You're your own brand.
Basically.
Yeah, because every time you go to that table and you're selling.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like how about dessert? How about wine? Knowing, suggestive selling, all that kind of stuff. Instead
Truly.
Of just like, y'all know what y'all want.
Which is exactly the reason what we were talking about earlier. But, there's an art to it.
Yeah.
And again, it's a noble profession. Mm-hmm. And I find that people have a tendency to look down upon people who are in the service industry as if they've taken a wrong turn in their life. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, and I tell this to my servers every once in a while, because of course they say, oh, maybe I should be doing something else. My family's always asking me, when, am I going to get a real job? And I was like, well, let me say this to you. You're making very real money. And the truth is that for what you guys make, there are people who work in the White House that aren't making what you're making.
What's an average?
Are you asking me to dish on what you could make?
Yeah, if somebody says, hey, I want to start waiting tables, what's a range that we can... Because some of the things you told me, I thought about picking up a few shifts.
So depending on the caliber of restaurant for which you work, you could easily walk out every night with $60 to $70, or you could easily walk out with $600 to $700 a night, depending on where you work.
Wow.
So you do the math on that every year.
I just did.
So is that why you're putting your apron on right now?
I put my apron on right now after this show.
And these are very real numbers.
But it's hard, it's work.
This is not where you start.
Yeah.
So if you do start out at a place, and so on average, if you start out at a place where you're making $200 or $300 a night, you started out a very good place.
Yeah, you have.
So and servers are very attuned to how long it takes for them to make money. And you have to understand that your average shift for a server or for a bartender is maybe 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You're rarely working a full 8-hour shift.
But you also have to save that money because it's very easy to have that cash, but you have to have a ritual of saying, okay, this is what I'm going to keep. This is what I'm going to save.
I know of a number of service professionals that are incredibly good at putting their money aside.
Yeah, when I was at Kincaid's, we had people that had timeshares.
Yes.
That's the first time I'd heard of it. They were driving BMWs. And they just worked at that one place, and they did maybe 3 shifts a week.
Truly.
And some of them were coming, they would do Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and they made their money.
Yeah, there are people who work seasonally. If you're working on like the Georgetown waterfront, there was a time that, the bartenders there only worked the summer. They made so much money during the summer that they took the rest of the time off to travel, or they went back to school, or whatever it was. But I think the thing of note is just that there is money in the hospitality industry. It's very much like a trade school, that you can definitely learn a number of positions, and then you can actually make them as building blocks in order to get to where I am, because I started as a server. I've literally done every job in the restaurant industry short of line cook and dishwasher. Everything else I have done. And, but it was also because I wanted to learn. I literally would go to people, it's like, how do I get to do this? I would like to learn this. And being hungry in that way, restaurant people love that, because we all have to grind hard, and they love people who are willing. They're like, I'll show you whatever you want, and that's how I learned.
Well, thank you so much. You're going to have to come back because there's a part 2 to this. Yeah,
Yes.
Of stuff that we talk about, relationships and being able to handle all of this stuff, but. Thank you so much, Shantice
Thank you for having
Rodriguez,
me.
and talking about the restaurant hospitality. If you want to reach out to her and have her do her thing, her magic at Hank's on the Wharf, you can go and see her there, or just go in and have something to eat. I want to thank all my listeners for tuning into Inside Style, DCRadio.gov 96.3 HD4, and remember, real style starts with being comfortable in your own skin. This is George Worrell. We'll see you next time.
In DC, for DC, DC Radio, 96.3 HD4, and DCRadio.gov.